Okay, time for Rascals. Okay, this is one of those where on the one hand you have this idea. It's like, oh, this sounds like it'd be great for a kids thing, and wait, no, no, it really isn't. Anyways, this got apparently something that the people had bought a script idea for that had been submitted to them, and because they'd actually paid money for a script idea, they would feel obligated to actually use the script idea they paid for, and thus they eventually came up with Rascals. Overall, I think this episode can be broken into three major parts. One of which is hand waved by the episode, and ultimately something that I personally think would be very interesting and usable as a premise for a game, and even if it's just like a one-off episode where you do something a little bit different. The lead for this was that Picard, Rolaren, Keiko, and Guinan, yes, that specific combination of people, were on some sort of expedition doing botany and archaeology on the planet Marlonia. What do we know about Marlonia? Just that they went there. Yeah. Let's see here. Let's see. Got mention of two plants that grow there, which again, we see one of them. So there is at least that. Actually, hmm, this looks in a lot. This is one of those things where I think they found a colorful potted plant to use as a prop. And this seems to be Beverly Crusher holding the plant. Although, if I remember right, part of the whole thing with the plot was that the plant had gotten de-aged with along with them, and that Beverly Crusher used the plant as an experimental test subject to figure out how to reverse the de-aging thing. But I'm getting ahead of myself. We're going to get back to the de-aging thing later, and how the de-aging thing is apparently able to rip apart shuttles. Ugh, yeah. Oh yeah, the counterclock incident. I'm getting to that. Anyway, so um, Picard found pottery and is trying to figure out who left the pottery somewhere. Now, one of the things that's interesting about this is that the Taguans aren't on the planet Marlonia. And it's one of those things where they kind of sort of hint at the idea that certain races exist on multiple planets and have been traveling the galaxy for, centuries or something, and left behind archaeological relics. And these aren't races that are actually interstellar powers. We have no idea who they are. They're just mentioned as being people that created archaeological relics. It's a very Star Trek thing. It's like just like offhand mentioned that some species existed here at some point in the past, and uh, never elaborate on who they were or what happened to them. It's like, why would the Marlonians, Taguans, and Baranians have similar pottery designs, unless it's just some weird form follows function coincidence, or they had some sort of shared culture that realistically, if it's a race that you didn't actually have reason to believe actually had interstellar travel, it would actually be quite interesting to try to figure out how they'd apparently had contact with some other race on some other planet when they didn't actually go there. That's an interesting thing to ponder, especially given how Star Trek has established that you don't always need starships to travel to other planets. But anyways, yeah, because like long range teleportation is a thing in Star Trek. They don't normally do it, but it is a thing in Star Trek. Teleporting to other solar systems is simply considered too difficult to be practical for the Federation's purposes, but not impossible. Yeah, that's a thing. Anyways, but again, something like that is a fun thing to throw in. It's like, ooh, mystery. It's a very cheap way to throw in a mystery, though, because you're not actually kept throwing anything of substance there. And in the case of a TTRPG, your players might decide they want to research Bahrainian history. Do you have Bahrainian history for them to research? Have fun with that one. Anyways, moving on. Brillians actually did come up in more than one episode. They're a minor race that is barely exists. Okay, so um, again, it's here as background fluff. There is no depth to it because it's background fluff. And to be honest, this is one of those things where it's like the basic de-aging plot. Because yeah, we're going to get move on to that. Because while this idea of having players RP a botany and archaeology expedition is cool and a fun idea, the basic premise is literally the only thing that exists in the episode. So if you're going to do that, you have to make it up. So the de-aging plot. The explanation for how they get de-aged in this episode is one of the most infamous examples of the power of technobabble ever seen in Star Trek. Also, opens up a massive plot hole that has become infamous in the community. Because if you can use a transporter to de-age people at will, um, why don't you? Again, this is also a thing that comes up with certain illnesses too, is that if you can simply transport someone from point A to point B and edit their transporter pattern to edit out the illness, why don't you? Actually, it's hinted in some episodes that transporters are in fact designed to do that, but due to the whole like biofilter sweep thing, because like they apparently, it's like uh, if the transporter beams up people who have certain kinds of contamination on them, the transporter will, in fact, automatically remove that contamination from them. Or at least it's supposed to. And then there's that one weird Voyager episode where that goes horribly, horribly wrong, and the transporter gets confused and turns Tuvok and Neelix into Tuvix because the transporter was just that confused. Anyways, again, the technobabble explanation here is that it involved something called a molecular reversion field. Um, Now, what the molecular reversion field actually did to the shuttlecraft uh, was it caused certain parts of the shuttlecraft to have their molecular structure disintegrate. How exactly this actually works is completely unexplained because it causes a piece of titanium alloy to be uh, deteriorate into a condition where simply picking up and holding it in your hands could cause the metal to crumble to dust. Which one could say that this means that it just has all of the molecules in it less connected to each other than they should be, which is theoretically a thing. Okay. Like metallurgical principles do kind of go with the idea that you can sort of kind of just rearrange the molecules and have the metal take on different properties. So rearranging the molecules so that they're not touching each other anymore would actually make the metal crumble to dust. Anyways, the molecular reversion field and having a transporter beam pass through the molecular reversion field is a key part of the de-aging incident. However, in the process, the reason why the transporter de-aged them wasn't actually directly a result of the molecular reversion field. It's a result of the transporter pattern being incorrect because the sensors attempting to lock on to the targets to transport them aboard are actually missing key aspects of the people being transported, namely this MacGuffin that uh, isn't part of real biology and is something made up by the people who created the episode as a way to explain aging in a way that is something you can simply physically remove from someone. Yes, I mentioned earlier that this has one of the most um, technobabble explanations of any sort of technobabble ever to exist in Star Trek Online or Star Trek in general. And in this case, the people writing this episode, coming up with this explanation for the de aging was actually apparently one of the biggest um, issues with the entire episode. Is that the core thing was like, uh, the original script as bought didn't apparently actually have a suitable explanation for how they got de-aged. So they just and that was something that they had to go through multiple script iterations to try and come up with was a decent explanation for it, and they came up with this instead of something that's actually a good explanation. Hmm. And this is where I feel the need to mention the whole counterclock incident. See, de-aging is actually a thing that's come up in Star Trek in multiple episodes previously. The counterclock incident is a bizarre parallel reality where time flows backwards, and thus any people from our universe going to that universe um, will age backwards because that's just how the rules of that other universe work. Thing is, that's actually temporary, and simply returning to our universe causes the effect to go back to normal. But presumably, staying longer would actually, yeah, it's one of those things that's like a bizarre, like sci-fi concept. But again, Star Trek: The Next Generation also has the concept of anti-time, except the version of in Star Trek: The Next Generation is an anomaly in the main universe that causes time to it's not actually flowing backwards, but it's breaking causality in a way that kind of sort of looks like things are having their status uh, reset to how they used to be. Such as, someone with a scar has the scar disappear because their arm reset to a older version before it had the scar. Except that you're not actually going through the process of removing the scar. It's just not there anymore. And it was causing people to get younger. Notably, however, this was a slow process and didn't de-age people particularly quickly. It was theoretically de-aging people. Oh, and also there's that whole like metaphasic radiation thing from that one TNG movie, Insurrection. Yeah. Um, Forgot about that. Oh, right. It's hype. Da, da, da. Yeah, the whole like briar patch thing, metaphasic radiation. Thing is, though, is that metaphasic radiation, while it can cause someone to de-age, it actually won't cause you to um, revert to a child. It will cause you to, well, you'll be an adult, but, and actually, people even with the metaphasic radiation did slowly age. It's just that it would take you centuries instead of decades. Anyway, though, back to this one. This needed a really, really fast way to de-age people, so they came up with this transporter pattern idea, but didn't think about the fact that one, this requires a transporter to work in a way that doesn't make sense for any other explanation of the transporter's pattern. Two, it also implies that you can do this intentionally and raises questions about why the Federation doesn't do that on a regular basis. Because let's face it, if it's this easy, why wouldn't you? I mean, a lot of people who are, extremely old would willingly become children again if it meant, not dying of old age. And the key implication here is that it is, in fact, actually making them children. It's not just like making them the size of children and still being old. It's legitimately de aging them to being physically the equivalent of 12-year-olds, which, a lot of people would jump at the chance for that. Again, one of those things that if you introduce it into a TTRPG, players will probably have fun with it, possibly in ways you don't want, but they will be having fun with it. Anyways, so um, again, it's a plot element that can be an interesting thing. Just use it carefully and moving on. So there's the third thing, which is these guys. Yeah, there's a Ferengi boarding party that attacks the Enterprise while they're trying to figure out what the heck is going on, and they manage to somehow cripple the ship before um, Picard and his crew can counterattack them. Which, given that they had two Klingon birds of prey, is strange because why are Ferengi using Klingon tech? But these are Ferengi privateers who are y- um, using whatever means and technology they have to do whatever. And they are, in fact, attempting to steal the Federation flagship so that they can sell it. Yeah, it doesn't go very well. In fact, the only reason the Ferengi are able to get anywhere with this is executing a sneak attack that completely catches everyone off guard. If not for that, the Ferengi would have basically just been slapped around and laughed at. But they managed to beam most of the crew off the ship before the Enterprise could uh, do anything. And also, they managed to do a targeted attack where they could cripple the ship's weapon systems and shield systems before before even entering combat. So that while the ship was able to get off one or two shots at the Ferengi controlled birds of prey, that didn't really go very far. So the Ferengi were able to leave the ship more or less helpless and then beam aboard and also at the same time beam most of the crew off of the ship. Where did they beam them to? Yeah, LIGO 7. See, because that's where the Enterprise was. Is they went to LIGO 7 to figure out what the heck was going on at LIGO 7. Because there's a Starfleet science team doing science stuff, and the Ferengi here are actually here to steal the Vendorite. Not that they actually explain why they're here to steal Vendorite, just that they're stealing Vendorite. And the science team, of course, get forced to be slave laborers working in the mines to produce uh, minerals for the Ferengi team. And again, like I said, it's like this is literally all we know about Vendorite. What is it valuable for? Who are the Ferengi selling it to? We don't know, which is unfortunate. However, again, it's a MacGuffin. Now, I have to say, the idea of a Ferengi slave labor camp being used as the uh, plot point for the episode is actually rather interesting because it's been established that yes, the Ferengi absolutely would do stuff like that. In TNG, the Ferengi were generally written as bad guys. In DS9, the Ferengi were generally written as bad guys because of the fact that they're just, generally kind of amoral as a culture. They don't really put a high emphasis on, being morally upstanding. Their idea of morality is extremely selfish. Anyway, though, so yeah, overall, having Ferengi do some sneak attack is a genuinely a good idea. It's like, yes, now your team is stuck where they have to deal with a Ferengi. Whatever will you do to escape the diabolical Ferengi? One of the versions of the script, they apparently considered having Cardassians instead of Ferengi, which logically actually would also work because, like, realistically, while the Ferengi work for this reasonably well, it's a minor rewrite to write in a different race instead of Ferengi. Like, Cardassians would also work. The episode, as aired, used Ferengi instead of Cardassians because Ferengi are less scary than Cardassians, and that was apparently the entire reason for it. Otherwise, they probably would have used the Cardassians because Cardassians were more of a serious threat, and Ferengi were a comical threat. Yeah, Ferengi are comical, but uh, the Ferengi are still, bad guys who have a bad guy empire doing bad guy things across an entire quadrant. Humorous or not, they're still a legit threat. Anyways, though, yeah, that's about it for this. It's like the whole idea of the using a transporter to change someone's age. It's got so many unanswerable questions because of the sheer MacGuffinness of it all. But hey, if you wanted to do a plot where you quickly de-age people, that does kind of work. Although, now that I think about it, in one of the other episodes, they did actually establish the idea of localized time distortions. You could actually have a localized time distortion do that. I don't remember the name of the episode. It's the one where they have it the quantum singularity life forms trying to use the warp core of a Romulan ship. I don't have time to look that up. But anyways, yeah. Again, there's several different ways in Star Trek to de-age people if you really, really want to do a de-aging plot. And also, this episode started with the idea of finding the people after they were, lost in space because of reasons. You don't necessarily need to do the whole like molecular reversion thing as the reason why they're lost in space. You could have it be a system malfunction caused by a uh, time dilation field affecting one side of the ship but not the other. And of course, you could also throw in the anti time thing so that the time dilation field is actually causing time to run backwards on one side of the ship, thus causing all of the fields to, or ship systems to horribly malfunction. And, any person caught inside that would de-age. Now, being part inside, part outside seems like a bad thing, and that actually did get brought up in that one episode where Picard sees an apple on a table. It's like, huh, this apple looks like it has mysteriously decomposed as if it had been sitting on this table for months instead of, minutes. And then he tries to pick it up, and his hand suddenly has the fingernails grow, uh, t- uh, as if, in a matter of seconds, his hand experiences like 7 days of aging or something silly like that. Oh boy. Anyway, though, but like I said, there are several different ways you can de-age people in Star Trek. If you really want to do that as a plot, and also the Ferengi privateers thing. That was a really good idea for a throwaway bad guy because you beat this group of Ferengi privateers. Allegedly, they're not part of some sort of organization of Ferengi privateers. No, no. Allegedly, this is the entire outfit. You know, um, you could make it so that that's actually a one-off group, or maybe you could reveal that they're actually part of an organization, just lying about it to hide the fact that. See, because like if they're not part of a larger group, they'd probably be easier for them to get out of jail and stuff. Whatever. Anyways, that's long enough. See you guys later.